Hello, and welcome to this video on tips and tricks for teaching English online. This video is going to discuss these 10 points and offer lots of tips. So, let's begin. Point number 1 is broadband. Generally, you need at least 3 megabytes per second download and upload speeds to use all the features on the video conferencing software like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. You can check your broadband speed by using an internet speed checker like this one if you're in the UK. You can see from my data I have a download speed of 44 megabytes per second and an upload speed of 10 megabytes per second, and this is more than enough to teach online and use all the features. If you don't have enough megabytes, then I suggest mobile broadband may be your answer. So our top tip is this: check your mobile phone 4G network providers in your area and invest in a mobile broadband router instead. Okay, moving on to point number 2, which is training. Both students and teachers need training in how to use the technology. So our tip for students is that the first class should be explaining and practicing the controls in the video conferencing software. For example, how to raise a hand, how to share a screen, how to get in and out of a breakout room, how to access materials, and how to upload a document for assessment. And of course, teachers need training too. So our top tip is teachers should have a good induction before they begin teaching on a course on how to use the technology and good, clear, practical training. Some teachers are technologically challenged and will need lots of support and practice. For example, teachers need to know how to put students into breakout rooms, how to create OneDrive shared documents, and how to create forums on virtual learning environments. Okay, the next point is point 3, rules. So we'll start with student rules. It's so important to set clear rules before you begin a course, and perhaps students should sign a code of conduct agreement on the below points. So please pause this slide and read through these key rules. Okay, moving on to teacher rules. This tip is very important. It must be stated that standards are the same as working in a physical classroom with regards to professional appearance, behaviour and teaching. These rules are very similar to student rules, but also include that teachers must have a backup computer or device and also create a means of direct contact in case anything fails. Again, please pause this slide and read down through these rules. Okay, this leads into point 4, communication. With so many different ways to communicate, it is imperative that the mode for students to communicate with teachers is simple and clear. It goes without saying that clear information is needed on where to access materials and how to communicate with teachers and students. Our tip is a good rule is that all official communication with teachers and students is done through email. For example, student questions, student tutorials, and information on exams or deadlines. Next is point number 5, backup plans. So what happens if your computer fails or you lose contact in the middle of a class? Plans need to be in place for every eventuality. It's important that you have a second computer or an iPad or at least a smartphone, and with every device you should have all the apps loaded and ready to go if your main computer crashes. Our key tip here is that you set up a class social media group like WhatsApp or WeChat, and in addition create a class representative who will help you if anything goes wrong. Using these chat apps means you can communicate instantly with the class if everything crashes. Okay, moving on to the next point, which is number 6, and this is camera on or camera off. Personally, the key tip here is that students and teachers should keep their cameras on. This is because it creates a much better learning environment and demonstrates good interaction and engagement. Of course, the teacher can also see clearly what the student is doing. However, if the student has a weak broadband signal, then unfortunately, this is the first thing, the camera, that needs to be turned off to improve the signal. Okay, so moving on now to point 7, shared documents. And specifically, I'm just going to talk about OneDrive shared documents. Now, basically, the possibilities are endless with OneDrive. You can create class folders and you can put lesson documents in these and vice versa. Students can upload work to the folders. So our first tip is tip number 1, and this is personally you need to be very organized because like all folders, these can get out of hand quite quickly. I suggest thinking very carefully about what you will be doing on the course and what you want the students to create and upload. You also have to think about who you give sharing access to. For example, sharing a folder means that everything in that folder is accessible. A good place to start is to create 2 main folders. One folder for all class content, which is based around you, the teacher, and what you want to share and let the students have access to, and one class folder with individual student folders inside. Now, individual folders are personal to that student and they can upload their work as the course progresses. This slide shows an example of 2 main folders, and then the individual folders can be personalized to a particular student and shared with that student accordingly. Okay, tip number 2, virtual notebooks. I've created virtual notebooks and put these in the students' individual folders so the students can add content to it in or out of class. I also put guided homework, activities and tasks into these virtual notebooks so the students know exactly what they should be doing out of class. This makes checking students' work much more easier with everything in one place. Tip number 3. I have also found that creating one shared document for a whole class activity in class and putting them in pairs or small groups works really well and really enhances motivation. They can see each other's work, they can see each other working, and the teacher can easily monitor and guide everyone's work in real time. Here are some examples. This is a pair work activity on SPSE framework writing, and this is an introduction writing with students writing individually. Okay, point number 8 is methodology. Teaching online is very different to the physical classroom. It can take quite a long time to understand how to approach the teaching. One key point is that everything takes much longer. The process of asking a question and waiting for an answer or choosing someone and them answering can take much longer. Putting them into breakout rooms and returning also takes up valuable time. So tip number 1 is planning lessons. I think it's really important to focus on the main objectives of the class. Be careful not to create lengthy lead-ins or unnecessary tasks that only partially relate to the main objective. Think seriously about what you are hoping to achieve, for example, the student's outcome by the end of the lesson, and this should be your main focus. Tip 2 is asynchronous and synchronous activities. So reading and listening should ideally be done outside of the class as asynchronous activities. Activities that they do without the help of the teacher that is not in the live class. Checking answers and discussion of the text should be the main focus of the online class. In this way, students can work together to consolidate their learning and build their knowledge. The teacher plays a more facilitating role rather than a provider of information in these types of classes. Okay, tip number 3, nomination. Asking open questions is very difficult as generally only one person can speak at one time. So, nomination is the key, and teachers need a good system of keeping up with who had been asked and who is going to be asked next. I always have their names in front of me and tick each one as I nominate them. Okay, tip number 4 is working on shared documents in class seems to be a highly motivating and engaging. I suggest trying to include these as much as possible as these focus the students and encourage spoken English. Examples would be notes on a lecture they had listened to before class, writing an essay plan together, brainstorming ideas around a topic. Even using one shared class document for individual writing seems to be more stimulating as they can see each other's work and learn from one another. Tip 5 is discussion boards and blogs, so videos, MP4s and audios, MP3s need to be embraced and actively encouraged. Teachers can set up speaking activities so that students can record and upload to discussion boards on virtual learning environments. In turn, the other students can listen to these and add comments. Tutors can also use these to provide feedback and help improve students' speaking skills. This also works well for small group seminar videos. Okay, tip 6 is use a range of interactive apps. So, things like Socrative, Quizlet, Padlet, SurveyMonkey and Kahoot are all great apps to create variety. Anything that breaks up the monotony of the online class and adds a different perspective is a good investment to improve motivation. Okay, tip number 7 is iPad and pencil. In my opinion, this is an indispensable piece of technology. How teachers cope without it, I have no idea. I've been using this on Microsoft Teams and Zoom, and it has made my life so much easier. You can brainstorm ideas, take notes on listenings, you can fill in answers, provide alternative answers, you can highlight words for pronunciation, you work on reading text, highlighting and identifying ideas and answers. The possibilities are endless. In fact, we have made 2 videos on our YouTube channel on how you can use an iPad and pencil for teaching English online for Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Okay. Point 9 is material choice. Something that you really need to remember is that although you may be in the UK or America or Australia teaching, you are actually in the country that you're teaching the students. Therefore, you have to be very careful with what materials you use in your class. There are strict rules of what you can and cannot discuss in these countries, and students may feel very uncomfortable or may even be unwilling to take part in lessons that fail to follow these rules. You must investigate the rules and the social systems in place in the particular country where you are teaching. Like a really small example is that if you're showing Chinese students a YouTube video in your lesson, you're breaking protocol as YouTube is banned in China. Okay, so now the final point, point 10, tutorials. When should I conduct tutorials? Personally, I would suggest every week. One-to-one time with the teacher is incredibly valuable in this teaching environment. It provides the student with an opportunity to discuss their needs and ask any questions, but also it helps the teacher to get to know the individual more. Tutorials can be used for pastoral care, feedback on writing or assignments, individual speaking, and discussing outlines or plans. Our top tip is that you should try and include seminars as tutorials too. Dividing the class into small seminar groups and meeting one group at a time is an effective method of online teaching. Students can prepare for a discussion and hold this for 20 to 30 minutes. The teacher can then provide valuable feedback rather than jumping in and out of breakout rooms. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video on tips and tricks for teaching English online. You can go here if you would like further information. Thank you for listening.